Luckily for us, India is in our blood, not only in our genes, it's part of our ethos. And that's why you're all here, and I salute you for that, for your commitment with us. I know how hardworking you all are and how difficult it is to find time. You certainly don't have some 10 servants and 2 chauffeurs in every household like wealthy Indians have. You have to do everything on your own. And therefore, to find time on a Saturday, and on a glorious day like this, away from the family and your other chores and other obligations, it shows deep commitment. I thank you for that. Yesterday, I had a chance to go to Robbinsville Akshardham Temple. Some of you must have heard of that. I'm not particularly a temples man. I'm a bit of an agnostic. My philosophy in dealing with God is one of mutual non-interference. That I don't bother about God if God doesn't bother about me. Leave me alone. But I have deep respect for genuine spiritualism. Yesterday I was profoundly moved. It was a reflection of the best of India's culture and tradition. You may be a believer, you may not be a believer. But the quality of this culture, the love that made them put together with painstaking detail, showcase the best of India. It gave me pride. It gave me a sense of pride and joy. That's what we are capable of. That's what we accomplished throughout history. Some of you might have seen me checking the smartphone. Yesterday, again by accident, I read an Economist piece. Allow me to read one short passage, the latest, this week's Economist. It said, any large bank with operations in India is making significant effort in similar ways. He explained, what's happening. And he said, with hindsight, given its prowess in computer engineering, all this will look obvious. He's talking about people like you. The large number of workers at the high end being engaged in all the international banks now in India, because of the amount of the quality they bring to the table. But bankers say they have been startled by how fast India, notwithstanding its local challenges, infrastructure, corruption, the usual stuff, has become an intellectual force that is now shaping their global fortunes. All the global banks, they're not saying India is going to the biggest hub of all the global banks for all the quote-unquote back office operations, but high-end operations. Another example of what we can accomplish with incentives and right if efforts are made. We see these things and we see that. See the glaring contrast. It's very hard for me to make people understand that we're really at the bottom in school education in India. I remember years ago, 15, 18, 20 years ago, I was talking to a vice chancellor of a technological university. I told him, look, our education is terrible. I was talking in that context about engineering education in the colleges. And that man's response, a well-meaning man, but not a very thoughtful man, his response was, sir, but so many of our kids are going to America. We are doing well. He really believed that. Well-meaning man. Around the same time, I remember I took out Montek Singh Ahluwalia for dinner in Hyderabad when he came down. The 2 of us were there for dinner. I only wanted to sensitize him about the crisis in higher education in India. Because Montek went to the bluest of the blue schools and colleges. He went to Doon School. Either immediately after that or after a state institutions college, he went to Oxford University. And that's it. Montek was one of the brightest of Indian economists. Very, very sharp. 30, 40 years ago, I knew him 40 years. So I wanted him to understand the reality of Indian education, which Manmohan Singh would understand because he went to ordinary schools and universities, but Montek would not understand. He was stunned when I explained it. Around the same time, I invited the chairperson of the UGC, chairman of UGC in Delhi, for a lunch for a dinner in Delhi, one of my visits. Him and one or two members of the Public Service Commission, I invited them. I asked this chairman a question. I didn't know him very well. We knew each other by reputation. So I said, Professor so-and-so, what do you think of our universities? He said, sir, they're fantastic. I was startled. I said, what do you think of American higher education? He said, that's useless. Believe me, I called him only to discuss the crisis in higher education, and he was the man in charge of higher education in India. I did not utter a word in the next hour and a half. without posting that, because there's no point. There's no meeting point. If he does not even understand the crisis in the I'm sure some ideas don't work everywhere. In a large and complex country, there is no one-show-fit-all solution. These are some generic issues, broad applicability to 90% of India. But I'm sure there's a lot more improvement that's both necessary and possible. And each of us can bring to the table our creativity, our expertise, our knowledge, and our contacts. And then push the needle by local action as well as by persuasion and advocacy for policy change. In addition, as I said, the testing board I talked about, we decided that we'll take the plunge and start that process. And I want to be part of this. Maybe some other initiatives in some other sectors. We'll have to carefully think and design. I always believe in, I'm like an engineer, though I'm not a trained engineer, I'm a medical doctor. I always believe in the principle of layers. To achieve a great task, if you put in more energy than we ordinarily prudent, then it's not a great accomplishment. I'm not impressed by a tremendous amount of hard work achieving very little. I'm impressed by doing very little but strategically and getting large outcomes. India demands that because there are so few of us, so little energy that's available, but we require so much to do. Unless we really understand strategically, we cannot get great outcomes. All my life is done. I take pride in that. Minimal effort, minimal cost, minimal cost, achieving very big dividends without too much of fuss and publicity. That is my style and approach. I believe that's the right approach. I'm sure others have different views and they're entitled to that. So my appeal is, let's look at a long-term engagement and create a body of champions for India in various sectors in the coming years. If things happen in 1 year, wonderful. If they take 5 years, so be it. There's no choice. Better late than never. Some things may take a generation, so be it. A nation of India's magnitude and complexity cannot be transformed overnight. And a reformer must have infinite patience. And I have enormous patience. I'm impatient, I'm angry, get many things wrong, but I channelize my anger and impatience constructively and creatively. That's the only way you can preserve your sanity and make a meaningful contribution to the country. So it is with this urge that I came here. Thank you for your kindness, for your affection, but most of all, for your attention and for your passion for the country. Let's channelize it and see in what manner we can do. I don't care which party, I don't care which platform, I don't care which state, everything is ours. But outcome is all that I bother about. And if this happens without your and my intervention, even better. Why sweat a lot when that can happen without all this effort? If it requires our effort, let's put in that effort. Strategically, intelligently, with humility, but also with confidence. I will stop at this. Let's make it an engagement around this, plus also other issues I'm sure will be bothering you, concerned about India. This is not the only issue of India, though I believe it's perhaps the most important issue. I keep telling people, if there is a God and God appears before you and says, you're asking for too much, I can't grant you too many wishes. I'll only grant you one wish. I would say, please give us education of quality. A lot of other things will take care of themselves. But then, equally important are other things we cannot ignore. So I leave the floor open for discussion. Thank you.
And is increasingly this corporate education. Even in the US, majority of the students go to private, public education. I think the key is really how can we strengthen, and some of the new governments said we are going to give vouchers so that they can take that money and go. And that leads to a cycle of corruption. Unless the private education, which is funded by the taxpayer, is not properly monitored.
Great questions. I have identical background. Went to village school, Panchayat Samitis, Jilla Parishad, Telugu medium, so on. We were all lucky. But there was enlightened leadership and there were people with voice for stakeholders. Once stakes and voice come together, accountability is there. And despite abject poverty, low salaries, poor infrastructure, we all were privileged to get the best education that was possible under the circumstances. And all of us, you and I, none of us ever felt in our lifetimes that because we went to those village schools, in some way or other we were handicapped. There's not a moment in my life when I felt that education did not serve me well. We were lucky. But three things happened for a period of time. One of the things you mentioned. The first thing that happened was because of the pressure from the organized teachers' unions. Poor chaps were paid very low wages, and even that was paid infrequently in those days. Because the state had to give grants to the local government. They were all local government employees. They were recruited, they were accountable to, they were paid by the local governments. But with the government grants, because they didn't have resource base then, or they don't have resource base now. And there were delays. Because this pressure, Mr. Brahmananda Reddy, quote unquote, provincialized the teachers. That means teachers are no longer employees of the local government and of the community, but of the state of Andhra Pradesh. The moment they became government employees at the state level, large state, suddenly accountability systems disappeared. The local leadership earlier took ownership, they held them to account, they treasured the good teachers. If you recall, our ancestors or parents, etc., we used to fight for the best teachers in our schools. Good headmaster, good math teacher, good biology teacher, whatever, because their kids' life is involved. The local government operated on that basis, not patronage, but to see that actually good education is delivered. But once it's delinked, that is the first thing. Accountability is lost. The second is examinations. I don't recall exactly whether it's Mr. Brahmananda Reddy or Mr. Narasimha Rao's time. They said everybody will be promoted irrespective of examinations. Otherwise, during our time, I presume that you are roughly at my age or maybe younger, because I'm a pretty old man. Examinations were sincere, systematic, timely. And they were actually quite meaningful examinations. They were important for going to the next grade, 6th grade, 7th, 8th, 9th, etc. The moment you delink that, you said everybody is promoted except for a couple of public examinations, then there's not even a proper measurement. That's why if you ask many youngsters who are not well educated in India, you ask them, what have you studied? They said, 10th Daka Chadivan surrendered. You notice that expression? Up to 10th, basically, they were promoted routinely without any knowledge. 10th they failed. In those days there was no rampant mass copying in 10th. Therefore failure was there. Nowadays even 10th they will pass. They'll say intermediate Daka Chadivan. Because inter exam, when it's a stupid exam, at least there's not that much of rampant copying in inter. Many people fail in inter. +2. So second is examinations, given up just for that. The third is the point you made. Partly because of the decline in public schools, because of these measures. Partly because the rising prosperity, the middle classes wanted their children to get better education, particularly English medium education. That's the passion then and that's the passion now. Slowly, the elites in the village and in towns, they started sending their children to English medium schools. The access also improved because more and more private sectors, initially the missionaries, later on private sector schools. This combination of all these three things proved to be a death knell to public education. Now what do? I have absolutely no doubt that the government's central purpose should be education and healthcare. Apart from obviously the rule of law and infrastructure, a government that does not guarantee quality education to every single child, irrespective of parentage and birth, has no moral right to exist. In my mind, I'm absolutely clear. But having said that, you and I cannot overnight enhance the credibility of the public system. Because if you take the statistics presented, in the last 7-8 years, when trillions of rupees, hundreds of thousands of crores of rupees is infused into the educational system in the public education, millions of children are migrating from government schools to private schools. Most of our children and our families, they migrated 30 years ago. So who are the new migrants to private system? The poorest of the poor. The last 10-year migrants into private system, from public system, are the poorest of the poor. So even the poorest have lost faith in this. For us to now tell them, give them bhashans and say public education is fantastic, please go back, send back your children to schools, that will not work. If you actually can improve public education, demonstrate it in reality, and they realize that this is actually better, then they will send. We have passed the speeches. Meanwhile, my view is, don't worry about the rich people's kids going to expensive schools. They'll take care of themselves. Worry about the public schools and the low-end private schools. Make the child the focus, the center of universe. All I want is public or private. I want the child to come out with these minimal outcomes, so that the child can be a productive member of the economy and society. Now, if public schools perform better in some states, they can enhance the credibility and then attract these kids. Wonderful. If private schools deliver that at a low cost, but without a burden on the parents, the government takes care of that burden, so be it. Because we don't have the luxury of waiting for another 10 years. Every year, you're talking about another 20 million children whose future is sealed. A total 180 million children in schools in the country. Actually, every year 27 million children in the country. So, it's like a war. While obviously because of our own background and deeper understanding of the public issues, it's a public system that must be the driver. India, at the current stage, cannot really distinguish low-end, private and public. To me, the child is the center, wherever it is, whatever it is, don't burden the parents, no fee burden, but outcomes must be there, and your support to private schools, if any, must be based on the outcomes. Public system, you do as much as you can. So it's all-embracing approach. No. I'm sorry for this sexist anecdote. You know the story of a long-suffering son-in-law. He was abroad and somebody told him, your mother-in-law died. She was a very difficult lady, so this chap jumped with joy. Your mother-in-law passed away. And he says, the friend who called him said, look, we can't keep the body like this. It's hot summer and you can't come back immediately. Therefore, please tell her how to dispose of the body. Shall we burn her, bury her, or embalm her? He said, do all three, don't take any chances. So our education crisis is so deep, so urgent. We don't have any options. We are doing everything possible. Private, government, do anything, but let the kids come out with decent education. That is my view. I'm sure there can be better models, but I really don't know how we can now say no to private sector, because it's too late. The poorest are migrating, rickshaw pullers, vegetable vendors. Some of them paying 1,000 rupees a child per month. We're all thinking that they're not spending much money. Incredible sums are being spent for them relative to their incomes. What they're spending is incredible. So now, somehow or other, get the kids educated. That's why I supported, though it was theoretically wrong, I supported the Andhra Pradesh state, combined Andhra Pradesh, when they went in for English medium schools, hoping that at least some of the children will be retained, and that does not become an issue. So do whatever it takes, improve the outcomes. Time is running out for the country.
Thank you, Jyoti Garu. The next question, apart from education sector, just as a break, but before that I have a question. After that we'll come back to you. Keep your question.
Hi, and I work as a volunteer for Asha for Education, if you have heard of it. It's a
Asha, Teach for India.
Yes, yes.
Said some fantastic work is being done by all these people. That's why I'm very enthused.
Exactly.
Yes, so many of the Asha conferences.
Correct. It's a question related to that. So my friends here, Srirang and Praneeth, whom you met a while ago, are also part of it. So my question would be twofold. One, how can we use resources like FDR or some other thing, as you said, to maximize the outcomes or improve our impact? And the other question would be, what other resources are available for us as youth or students in the US to be so that we can contribute a lot to underprivileged children or education back in India? So those would be my two questions.
My appeal to all of you is continue to do what you're doing. Support Asha, Teach for India, Pratham, Akshara. There are many organizations, but they're doing fabulous work. I am engaged with all of them. I feel each of their work is our work, and we support them, stand by them, encourage them in whatever manner, because the kind of energy they bring to the table is incredible. And the enthusiasm, and the genuineness, and some of the most talented Indians who could have fantastic careers, they join in Teach for India, going up 2 or 3 years of their very precious careers, sometimes 5-10 years, and coming and teaching in schools. But my only appeal is, that is about the delivery. While you continue to do that, whatever all of us together do is not enough for the 180 million children of India. Therefore, also look at what we are discussing today. The bigger picture. How do we impact the bigger picture so that the benefits of your experience will flow to millions of kids, not merely the 20-30 kids you are addressing there. And develop those insights, and let's use a collective voice. And for that, FDR is yours. See, we require a platform, some name. That's the reason why you call it FDR, you call it Loksatta or something, I don't care. This knowledge, this desire, these concerns are universal. And we are all together. That's the way I always operate. And you ask the Rasha volunteers, you ask the Teach for India adults, they all know. They treat me as one of theirs. And it's my duty to mentor them, to help them, to support them, to strengthen them. Including some private agencies, for-profit organizations also. There's a company called Exceeds India. There's some other companies. I don't care even if they're for-profit. As long as they're doing an extremely good job in education, just strengthen. Because as I said, it's a war. You have to deploy every single resource. We cannot afford a tough war. It will be a disaster.
Thank you.
I think he has something.
FDR, all the work they have done, right? Everything is available on the shared drive. It's public. You can refer to them, right? You can use them for whatever work you're doing. But at the same time, if you really want to join hands and support FDR in some of these activities, you can take my number or Nagesh Garu's number. You can reach out to us. We'll channelize it to JP Garu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
One
much.
other initiative we started recently with this intention is 25 people came forward on our invitation to go around a couple of states to understand all these, the good, the bad and the ugly, develop this perspective. It's a very hugely successful program. We want to replicate that, probably a few hundred champions like that who are already committed to the field of education, but who may have looked at it from one point of view. Now we require a 360 degree. And now we are in the process of creating those champions. So that again, we can all do together. And more people, once we are together, irrespective of what we are doing, how we are doing, we can develop a larger perspective and raise the collective voice. That will be very useful, and I want you all to be partners in that. It is all self-financed. What I said is we will not fund anything. It's not a typical NGO kind of activity. Let those who are interested come forward because we will minimize the cost. And they all came forward funding themselves in order to deepen their perception and work together collectively, even as they pursue whatever they're doing individually today. So it's a new model of creating champions with a collective voice. So we have to do many innovative things because this sector is incredibly important in our life.
Hi, sir.
There was also somebody there after you. Yeah, after you. Jiska paas lathi hai uske hands.
I'm Srirang. I'm also from Asha, and I had a question which was related to like creating structural change. And when I look at myself and where I am, and if I think I do want to create structural change, if I have any ideas, I do think that with my background I can have an impact. But how do I find a place to make that impact in creating that structural change?
The short expression that I have is 3 words: collective, informed, assertion. Individually, we are helpless. Even the well-connected, influential ones generally, except a very few lucky ones, are helpless. It has to be collective. That's where platforms. Informed, the kind of depth you bring to the table. And then assertive techniques, either interventions independent of government, or raising your voice collectively in a responsible way at the right time, utilizing the opportunity, the context. For instance, only recently I came to know that the state of Haryana is doing a very good job. I'm thrilled. Now we'll sit with them and then I want to really showcase what Haryana is doing and tell you in BJP, look, your state is doing very well. Let other states of BJP do it. Tell other parties, if your BJP state is doing very well, why can't you do it? So now create a healthy competition instead of this polarization, ugliness and fighting each other on stupid issues. Showcase the good practices. I was truly enthused. I didn't expect Haryana to do that because the state of Haryana is not known for a tremendous amount of progressive social activism. But it's now showing tremendous amount of initiative. So there are many ways these platforms can be created. But it has to be collective, informed, assertive techniques. Assertion does not mean rival rousing, but something that can actually create an outcome, impact.
Thank you so much. See, it's so endearing and warm to see youngsters like you participate in all of it. Thank you. A big round of applause for them. When the whole youth is contributing to social media, see,
Somebody raised a hand there.
Dithe?
Somebody raised a hand, but okay.
See, I was hoping for a question which is not. Oh,
Yes.
somebody from Sari takes precedence. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's a perfectly justified affirmative action.
Yeah, please. Then I was going to come to you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is all directed towards policy changes in India, right?
That is one of the key goals, but also to improve the practitioner's perspective.
Right.
There are
Do
many
you
of them.
have an interaction at individual level? Are you doing anything like merit scholarships? Anything like that?
No, there are
Is
many
there
good
any-
organizations doing that work. Please support them. Because if everybody tries to do everything, we'll end up doing everything badly.
That's what I wanted to know. If
See,
you
this
had
is-
anything on that side.
Thanks for asking that question, because very early on I asked actually how we can participate in these two young lads also asked the same question.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, very good question. I think that's where I see JPR is more motivated from a policy change rather than we doing on a daily basis, get onto your Skype and we.
No, he's right. I mean, that's
No,
where
it's not one is important or one is important. There are many wonderful on the North-South Foundation. Phenomenal work. Asha others, phenomenal work. Support them.
Yeah.
We don't require to know. There's no reason for me to get into that field because they are doing a better job. This is a field which is desperately needed because this has much, much bigger impact. Though it's much harder and there is no gratification because the satisfaction you get when helping a child is unique. You don't get the same thing by helping the whole country.
No.
I know as a doctor when I save a life, I know the high I get. But to improve healthcare system doesn't give you the high. But without that, all that we do is inconsequential. So we require that too.
Yes. I mean, policy change is a crucial thing. I mean, that's fundamental. But I was wondering if there is a diversification for your organization.
Others will do it because no, if we try to do everything like an NGO, it's not a smart thing. But this is a unique area and there is almost nobody to match us in this. Now, Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage, those of you who are students of economics will understand. If there are two countries, country A, let's say, is 10 times better than country B in producing, let's say, this microphone. But country A is also better than country B in producing, let's say, this cable. What the theory says is, both country A and country B will be better off if country A sticks to microphones and country B does this. If everybody tries to do everything, ultimately it will be inefficiency. It's counterintuitive. It's very hard for us because we are all from an agrarian background where we do everything. మనం తాడు తయారు చేసుకుంటాం, మనం కవర్ తయారు చేసుకుంటాం, మనం నాగలు తయారు చేసుకుంటాం. That's our culture because everything is self-reliant. But that's not how economy really works. The most efficiencies are brought when you stick to your comparative advantage. And FDR has a unique comparative advantage in looking at public policy and initiating processes of change. And if I do something else, I'll be deflecting the energy without just cost. There are others who are doing a much better job, let them do it, let's support them. That's how I
That's good.
Thank you, sir.